All right, y'all. I think we finally got our system set up. I think we're gonna be able to do this now. Maybe even be able to make more videos. Probably more in March. We're in February right now. A lot of work going on. A lot of different things to deal with. Um, so, we'll probably get going a little bit more with these videos, maybe, hopefully, now that I've got a little bit of the system set up. Still got to get a microphone, still got to get a few things going, but um, gonna try to get back into the videos. We've got a channel all set up, so might as well take advantage of it. I work from home, so we've got plenty of time to just kind of scream into the void here. It's not necessarily a void as long as some people are listening, but what can you do when you are fully remote? And we live pretty fully remote lives these days, especially if you work from home, don't have that same type of human connection that people used to have on a more day-to-day basis. If you're a man, obviously, going back into um, you know factory workforces, even kind of early white collar workforces, that kind of stuff. Everyone's pretty much in their own little world these days, and I think that's one of the big issues that we're dealing with, and one of the things that kind of informs what I think we're going to start out talking about today, which is basically what's going on with the United States political system at this present moment. As you know, we've got a new president. The second term of Donald Trump took office earlier this year, basically after the election in November. I was back in Michigan to vote. Um, Obviously voted for Kamala Harris, and the election did not turn out the way that I wanted it to. And now, what is happening in the United States political system is something that I think is pretty unprecedented, just in terms of basically, we've seen, different political parties look to take power in different ways before, but I think the way that this is being perpetrated is quite unique, as in it's coming from the executive level, using basically this unitary executive theory in the way that the right has been able to um, come up with a rationale, fuzzily within constitutional boundaries, using constitutional references. Obviously, it is unconstitutional what they do and what their ideas are. They want to basically destroy the Constitution, and create their own, correcting some of the things that they want to correct in terms of how the system works. That's ultimately the goal, is basically to do away with the Constitution that we have, do away with the separation of powers that we have. And they are basically creating that world within the unitary executive at this point. I'm not sure if they expected Donald Trump to be the president that they were going to be able to accomplish this with, but he's become a pretty effective vessel for them. They've taken control of the Congress, the presidency, and the Supreme Court, and they can basically do what they want, barring any type of larger scale mass revolt or change in the cultural and social context within the United States, or economic context that could shift those types of things. So a fundamental shift in how Americans live their lives. Um, some people want that. That depends on what direction that they want it. That they want it. Some people are. I think one of the things about Donald Trump and his political movement, you got to say it's been pretty effective. Unfortunately, I think it's effective more because of its ability to take advantage of the disenfranchisement that's been taking place over the last, basically since the New Deal coalition and the winning of civil rights for women and minorities, over the course of the last decade, or the last century. So, I mean, we've been able to build up these rights to a certain extent, but all during that process, there was a political project in place on the right. It had economic components of neoliberalism, anarcho-capitalism, that kind of stuff, and then it had social components of anti-abortion activism, the moral majority, religious conservatism, and evangelicalism to some extent. these are all political projects that kind of combine into what is the modern kind of conservative coalition. And then that combines with the ability of the Democrats to basically hollow out the coalition that they had built, building on FDR's coalition and then building on the civil rights movement and the Great Society projects and the ways that the Democrats were able to consolidate support among a number of groups that are racial minorities in the United States, um, by consolidating rights under their watch, basically, and giving power to or having those groups win power within the Democratic superstructure, with the Democratic Party superstructure, is the way that you want to phrase that. So, um, you know, I we had plenty of people that voted in this last go around. It was a pretty, based on what our standards are, it's a pretty high turnout election. What I would argue is that there are still millions and millions and millions of people that do not make their voice heard in the political process, whether that's, just day-to-day living or that's, the act of voting in an election. So I think the theme of our current moment is less that a majority of Americans are interested in following the political project that Donald Trump has proposed and that his supporters have proposed. It's more about basically the giving up, and just the being beaten down of the coalitions and the populations that, if activated within the political process, if they saw something that they wanted to invest in a political project, would be at the table voting or, participating in politics in the United States. So many reasons for that we can go into, but I think that's really the moment that we're living in, not only in the United States, but across the world. I mean, the United States is unique in some ways, or not unique, but has its it's the system of voting in the United States, for example, is basically uh, voluntary. There's no mandatory voting. For example, in Argentina, where I spent a lot of time, the voting system is mandatory. It's mandatory that you vote. There's a small fine if you don't. Most people, that's not something that they really that motivates them or not. But it's baked into the culture in ways that I think Americans seem to balk at some different aspects of how they secure their liberty by saying that I am free to not be free, basically. I'm free to not participate in the political process. Although, obviously, not participating in the political process is participating in the political process to a certain extent. You're allowing those who already have power to continue having power, or those who take power to take power freely. So you're participating in some way, whether or not you vote or not. But there's a lack of engagement with these types of political questions, um, that there's a whole range of reasons why that are responsible for that, including Republicans, including Democrats, including how we set up our party systems, including how the economic system of the United States, how the social system of the United States is designed. It is designed to exclude a number of people. It has excluded more and more people. Um, I would say in the trough of the crest of the wave that kind of rose after the civil rights movement and the height of the civil rights movement in the 60s and 70s, where these rights were won and the United States were still kind of operating in a labor environment where unions had a lot of power, where workers had a lot of power, where people still kind of made decisions within the factory, within industrialized centers, although the machinations were already in motion at that point. But this is we are now living in the husk of a social democratic system, um, a socialized system based on the New Deal programs, the Great Society programs, supercharged by a wartime economy during World War II, and the rebuilding of European economies, and basically the growth of the installation of the United States as the hegemon, even before the collapse of the Soviet Union, when that came to pass. I mean, the, that system was built in a lot of ways in competition with um, the Soviet solution to the issues of that were coming out of the 19th century, and industrialized capitalism. Um, so um, that's the political moment that we're living in, and so I think one of the themes that I think about a lot is trying to get away. I'm a historian. I study mostly. Um, I love studying cities. I love studying social movements. I love, pretty much any type of history that helps explain, how we got here, how, it explains the present, that kind of you can trace along the way, to find those artifacts that still kind of inform, what is going on. It helps you understand how the world works, and how the world continues to work and how it could work in the future, by looking at what happened in history. Um, I think one of the things within academic history that we, this within over the last few decades that historians have tried to get away from is like the old style of telling history is kind of colloquially referred to as the great man theory of history, where you're talking about certain individuals that put their thumb on the scale in different moments that allowed or brought different historical moments into being, and they're the movers and shakers of history. We try to get away from that vision correctly, and I think one of the things that often gets lost in the wash, especially in the way that media is consumed, in this day and age, and this hyper individualism that we live with, um, all as individualized consumers, especially in the United States consumer economy, where these structures of social cohesion have been so thoroughly dismantled, by the right wing project, by the neoliberal project, by these liberal subjects, where we're talking, you talk about the right, but where every individual is free to basically do what they want without government interference, whatever that means. Um, or on the neoliberal side, you think about the glorification of people in positions of power, with identity politics and those types of things that kind of glorify the symbolic wins within the existing power structure rather than changing the power structure so that it's more egalitarian, which I think is something that I would be more in favor of, and I wish the Democratic Party would move towards, in a more dramatic fashion. Um, but this great man theory of history is so discredited and should not be brought back into the fore because how many people live in the world today? Billions and billions of people. History is the the agglomeration of um, all of these different individual acts that are made, individual acts that are not necessarily the property or the result of individualized ontology, but people working within social structures and exercising their bodily and their mental autonomy, as individuals, within a larger system, so we can understand why people make these decisions. But people are making decisions, people are doing actions. Those things kind of, when they come together in social groups, have the power to move history. um, Individual can move history in certain points, like what if, but it requires everyone else to witness and to see and to. It's not like the old adage: if a tree falls in the woods without anyone to see it, does it actually fall? If you're doing things in the middle of the woods, maybe your actions contribute, to something larger, to a larger ecosystem, but it's going to be felt less strongly by the people around you. So when you work in groups, those actions get amplified, um, more than the sum of its parts. Other people are more willing to ascribe to something that is socially acceptable or shown to be something that, more people are involved in. You want to be part of a group. You want to be protected by that group and you want to be brought forward by that group. So the great man theory of history is wrong because what even if someone says something great, a great speech, a great, act of heroism, whatever it may be, these things are all created by the social context. They're all created by social situations. They're all, even if an individual makes an act of heroism or of breaking the status quo, it is oftentimes supported by um, a group that is supporting that individual. We talk about this is the equivoc the wrong view of, for example, someone like Rosa Parks. The mistelling of that history. She was a great woman. She was a great activist. She was a great symbol of freedom in this country, in the United States. However, the way that they talk about, obviously the whitewashing, that the kind of little bits of consumerist ideology that allows these little bits of truly fundamental activism and questioning of the system and how it works to be metabolized by the American consumer economy, is that you just kind of talk about, she's just this person that got tired and she wanted freedom and she, sat down on the bus and she didn't give up her seat. She was part of a larger superstructure of activism going back decades and decades and decades. It wasn't the first time that she had done that. It was the time where those types of actions were going to be noticed by a large group of people. There was a pressure point there, and it was applied by her and by the different people that surrounded her, in that activism that was going on in southern cities at that moment. Um, so, all of these things are informed in one way, shape, or form by groups of people and by coalitions of groups of people. So the big idea here, I think, that we're trying to get to is that, you know, Donald Trump, I've often thought, I'm much more of a structuralist, in my view of history than, that would be the opposite of this kind of great view of history, is less deterministic. I don't believe in a determinist view of history, where like things are, it's not a teleological view of history. It's not a Marxian teleological view of history where, this thing is destined to happen. And so these things are just kind of explained away by, oh, yes, this makes sense because of this. Um, but I do believe that the moments in history that we recognize, and the situations in which we are put, come from somewhere, and they're explained by the events of the past. And the people that are focused on at these moments, that kind of become the leaders, that become the symbols of what is going on, are just that. They are symbols. They are manifestations of a larger movement in the country, or within groups of people that kind of thrust them to the fore at that moment. Oftentimes, they are able to articulate something and are thus elevated by that group of people at that present moment, in order to kind of vocalize and be the symbol for that figurehead for that movement. And I think Donald Trump, as with any president or any leader of any movement, any campaign, the president is a figurehead, is a symbol of what's going on, and a representation of the events in the country, and the situation that's going on, within the society. And so, when Donald Trump won in 2016, it was devastating. When he won this time around, it was devastating. What he's done has been devastating to the country. Um, it will, it, the way that I felt when he won in 2016 and the way that I feel in 2020 is basically like, you imagine a future for yourself and your family, progress towards, a better society, a better context within which to raise children, a better world, a safer, more just world. Um, those futures just kind of went out with those decisions that were made by the United States population, voting population during these elections, and is one that, you know may have been the final straw in allowing, this coalition to basically take power in the United States and in a declining empire that's been hollowed out and basically take controls away from the electoral process and the democratic process in a way similar to a lot of different places as they declined. These systems, once the public stops doing democracy, it's very simple for someone who doesn't need be who doesn't believe in democracy to basically take hold in that place. And so that's what we're getting to here. We're talking about how Donald Trump serves basically as that kind of turning off of the future, that um, the representation of the futurelessness of our society in this present moment, a society of clickbait, a society of news cycles where nothing seems to stick. There's no memory even of like what has happened the day before. If you follow the politics, the 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 blitzkrieg um, political rhetoric and actions of this administration in the first term with Milei here in Argentina, with these rightward movements, is to basically do a bunch of things really, really quickly. Some of them are targeted, some of them are willy-nilly, but they basically throw antiquated media and antiquated control structures into frenzy, into crisis, while they are basically in control of the narrative. Um, and so it's a very effective strategy. Um, and it's effective because they recognize that the controls around them are too weak basically to control that type of updated 21st century bang 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 of political ability. And the structures just are not there. It's like trying to regulate AI or big tech before anyone understands what the hell that is. Um, so it's a new political software that people just have not gotten, the society just hasn't gotten their heads around yet. And it's going to do a lot of damage first before any type of movement of 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 people are able to basically corral it, and try to understand it and metabolize it and try to make something better out of what is left. So movements come and go, figureheads come and go of these movements. There have been left-wing leaders, there have been right-wing leaders, there have been political interests that are installed in different political moments that take power, different political infrastructures that have operated. This is a very like cold way to say this, but a lot of people across the world don't have this kind of anxiety, I would say, about the way that this stage of capitalism operates, and the way this imperialism, this this hegemonic power of the United States, or of the United States as a representative of an industrial technological imperialism that has dominated the globe for the last 20 to 30 years. Um, a lot of people just feel that directly. Look at what's going on in Gaza. Look at what's going on in any type of in the Congo, in any type of struggle for freedom and independence and or control of natural resources within a polity. There are certain people that are expendable, and the empire expends them. Um, and that's the way that these empires work. Um, the trampling of international law, the trampling of people that do not fit into the budgets or the operations of the large corporations that run global capitalism. So people feel that directly. It's not people of Gaza are not like anxious about what not Netanyahu is going to do next. They are feeling it. They are in the middle of a war. Um, and so um, it's a direct threat, and it's dealt with by using solidarity and a wartime footing where you're trying to build coalitions, build humanity among one another, and come out with another and try to defeat the threat that is opposing you. Um, whether usually that opposes you with overwhelming force. And so, these are the struggles that we need to pay attention to, and learn from and build a new system of international human rights upon, which guarantees these types of rights of freedom and self-determination for every person across the globe. And that's the vision of a future that we're going towards, and that's the vision of a future that elections of people like Donald Trump and the taking of power of these coalitions disallow, and turn in the other direction towards a hellish system of blatant inequality and injustice that is basically just a law of whoever has the bigger guns and more kind of control over the levers of the existing power infrastructure wins, um, until an alternative is built. And usually alternatives are built within the structures of what has come before. It's not like, it's not like these different systems of social organization or political organization fall out of space from Mars or something like that. And they are built within by people within these types of structures. Capitalism grew out of feudalism, out of the changing climate and social context, and the growth of international trade and discovery. Um, you know, a techno-feudalism, as Yanis Varoufakis would articulate it, is growing out of an industrial capitalism. As Marx might have described it. Um, it's growing out of that. It's something that built on top of that and is now kind of infecting across all the commanding heights of that system in order to build something different within which we all live. And so there will be other movements that come forward to take control. The human lifespan is finite, although it sounds like Elon Musk is trying to extend it for the select few as long as possible. I don't believe that those types of projects are will bear any fruit. With they might try something that they might achieve something that basically distorts fundamentally what it means to be a human person. Um, but it's we are all mortal, um, and I think we should accept our mortality. It's the thing that makes us human. So and equalizes all of us. So I think that's the kind of what they're trying to do at the top. But like these are all representations of what's going on in the world today and what's going on in the United States today. Um, Basically, the collapse of an old system, um, a more ready ideology that preys on the very precepts of that the id, um the unrestrained brutality within the existing system, that often gets projected onto faraway places that the people at the seat of the empire don't really have to countenance all the time, don't have to confront directly, that receive the benefits from that system, and so are complicit in upholding it, even though it causes this distortion, this guilt, about being able to benefit from that system. People like me have benefited from that system. People like me continue to uphold that system. Um, although we want to dream for something better and we want to build something within that system. The day to day. um, doesn't allow the day to day of an isolated individual. Here we are on a video, screaming into the void as we often do. Um, it makes it impossible to basically affect the levers that actually keep the system going, basically giving our tacit consent to it as we go. So that's a difficult way to live. It's not difficult. It's not as difficult as the people that are confronted directly by the brutalities of the gnashing teeth of that system. But you do have to look down and see what's going on and understand what's going on. And if you do understand what's going on, it's sickening. It's absolutely sickening to live in this system. And you need to find a way out, but you can't find a way out unless you do it with other people. And so these are channels that are built within, within the communication channels that are built within, the technological superstructure that this system has built, that can articulate alternative visions and can build solidarity even within the a digital space or something like that. But um, I think there will still have to be physical work that is done in order to change things. People are going to behave differently um, in their day-to-day lives, in their work, in their social interactions to bring about a change. And so that is all to say, we're living in the middle of basically the United States in different countries across the world that have experienced this before. In the United States, they say they don't. There's an old joke in Latin America where in Latin America a lot of dictatorships perpetrated in a lot of ways with the support of the CIA and different United States groups, different groups from Europe or around the world, interests of capitalists and business interests in the country. But those are military coups that basically they'll take a president and oust them from power and put them in jail or something like that. In some cases, they're killed. um, the way that the United States tend to do this is assassination attempts. You look at John F. Kennedy, Lincoln, all these folks that were interested in changing fundamentally what's going on. John F. Kennedy, to a certain extent, I don't think he was as revolutionary a president that as a lot of people think he was, but um, you know, the old joke in Latin America is that why doesn't the United States have coups? Because they just kill the presidents. Um, so um, what we're living through right now is a coup. Is the political coalition of the right that the right has been building since basically the New Deal coalition was able to take power. Um, I personally see this as an affront against all that we hold dear in the United States, all that is good about the United States, all that the United States has built in good ways um, throughout its um, throughout its over 200-year history. Um, all the things that we aspire to be, this is doing away with that. That is a beneficial project for some, although it's not as beneficial as they think it's going to be. It's going to be beneficial for like Elon Musk and Donald Trump and Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg and and eh, ExxonMobil and Shell and and Apple and the great the big superstructure companies that control natural resources, that control media, that control um, the information of the future, the information about everyone. They're the winners of this transformation, and it is up to the citizenry of the United States and the people of the United States to combat this not only at the polls, if that's an available possibility, and then when it's not an available possibility, to build that possibility once again. We're going back to the drawing board. We talk about um, the building of power throughout history, and we realize that there have been so many people that have been excluded from the political process through the entire history of the United States. Women didn't get the right to vote until 1919. Black Americans, the descendants of slaves, were not able to get the right to vote until we fought a literal civil war, and then there was amendments passed that were able to bring them into the political process. And even then, through de facto and de jure segregation in the United States, for another century, they were deprived of their right to self-determination and political self-determination in the country. So we're talking about entire populations of people that were not able to participate in the political process. And then we look at the history of the United States and we realize, well, a lot of the decisions that were made are because of political disenfranchisement or the lack of enfranchisement of most of the population of the United States. And so the best things that happened were when most people were involved in the political process or in the economic process of the country, the expansion of the federal bureaucracy, the expansion of New Deal programs that allowed a lot of people to find employment, to participate in the political system, to join unions, to collectively bargain, and advocate for themselves for a kind of 30 to 40 year period, between 1930 and 1970, when everything started to kind of go away. There was always a political project on the right to basically do away with these programs, and that's what they're doing now. They're dismantling the New Deal, and that's been the project for over a century. And the Democrats have realized that. This isn't like one madman showed up and did away with it. He is, as they show and as they kind of talk about, he's just a vessel. He's a vessel for their political program. He's been doing it. Tax cuts for the ultra wealthy, social controls for the anti-abortion folks. He's delivered on a lot of these larger agenda items. Sometimes they don't even know what to do with that because they're such minority issues. There's such like there's no way that they can articulate that type of political platform and win majorities in a democracy that of people that are not stupid and that understand where their best interests lie. But that's the role of propaganda to basically um, convince people that what is good for 10 people at the top is good for the rest of them, and they say, hey, we're on the same team. We want the same stuff. We'll give you this. Here's very transactional payoffs to different kind of insular groups that go along with their political project for that reason. So this is a culmination of all that. Um, this is not one person. This is not two people. This is not 10 people. This is a political project that's lasted for about 100 years. Um, they have their economic program, which is austerity, and basically dismantling the welfare state. They want less widespread benefits for the majority of Americans, and they want, a free enterprise system, which basically means that corporate titans are able to basically do what they want, run their business how they want, exploit labor and resources however they want, without basically any checks on their power. And this is what, as George Carlin says, they're going to get it. They're going to get it. It was already happening, 20, 30 to 40 years ago. The project kept going and kept going, got more and more powerful. And the Democrats and the coalition of the Democrat that supports the Democrats were not able to adapt to when the moment came to adapt to fight back against that political project. The left, whatever the fuck that means, and the political project of the people advocating for more egalitarian programs, more distribution of wealth, more participation of people in the political and economic system. We're not able to put together the coalitions, the believable ways from which people could build solidarity. They were not able to install those systems or do the things necessary to create that. And sometimes as Marx talks about, um, the the proletarianization of everyone. And you could translate that into a political lens by saying, the massification of the opposition against the oligarchs, Trump, Musk, Bezos, etc., um, is what is necessary for people to realize how collectively screwed they are, and then begin to form alliances but across their own groups rather than kind of be divided by the propaganda of the masters of the current political moment. So, um, those that is very, very powerful. Propaganda works, and so we'll see how long that works. Trump and his team have basically an entire state media apparatus behind them. The mistrust with the political system has been sown so deeply within the propagandized minds of so many Americans, the individualized fear that they have of the system, of the government. They just want to they can't deal with the piecemeal um projects that it would take to basically build power and build coalitions to make the world better. They just don't I don't even want to think about it. I just want this guy to just kind of blow everything up, and then we'll see. Like, anything different is better, because how I feel right now, I'm just suffering and suffering and suffering, and I can't take it anymore, and I hate everything. And so, you know I don't care what this guy says. I just need him to just blow everything up for me, and what just blow it up, and we'll see what happens in the wreckage. That's basically the bet people are taking, um, and it's an understandable bet based on the complicity of the Democratic Party and of the neoliberal wing of American corporate politics, that has ruled this coalition of voters, the New Deal coalition of voters, for so long, um, and just cannot mount a defense at this moment. They're literally unable to mount a rhetorical defense. The only people that are able to mount a rhetorical defense are people who are young enough to understand how crappy the future is, and so are willing to kind of lay down their rhetoric, lay down their futures to change it. People like AOC, or people who are, who have the ideological training to understand what's going on with the propaganda, be outside the propaganda, and advocate for a better vision of the future. People like socialists, or socialist senators such as Bernie Sanders, who is able to articulate an alternative vision that not only has to compete against the right, but also has to compete against its own party, and the dominators of its own party that want to basically silence those voices so that they can have control of the bureaucracy, rather than they'll sacrifice control of the country for the control of the bureaucracy, basically, because that is what maintains their positions. And so, that's why a lot of the criticisms of the propaganda, tend to hit home for people. The criticisms that the right wing propaganda levels at Democratic politicians is 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 understandable, for a lot of people. People get it. Um, these people don't represent you, and it's true. It's completely true. But then when, people farther to the left, or people have more kind of egalitarian visions, or of wealth redistribution, or alternative systems other than things like capitalism, um, when those people kind of argue against the right, the argument that the right levels at them is like, what about the people you tend to caucus with, other Democrats, neoliberal Democrats. What they don't understand is that we hate those people, the same way that the right has terms like rhino, Republicans in name only. Like, the base of the Republican Party, which I would argue is more kind of white supremacist, more rabid about the use of authoritarian power. Um, they don't abide by their representatives accepting restrictions on their power imposed by the more left-wing political party. And so, when they don't do the bidding of those that control the Republican Party, which is was less democratic than the Democratic Party. Let's make ourselves very clear. They respond to a base, but that base is being fomented by the directors of the party, which actually make all the decisions for the Republican Party. Like, yes, Trump um, didn't install, was able to defeat the corporate Republicans, but he was able to defeat the corporate Republicans in order to enact the corporate Republican vision, like just only in a way that kind of juiced the other kind of parts of the fringes of the Republican Party, white supremacists and different kind of new authoritarian visions. Um, People unsatisfied with the future, people heavily propagandized, people without kind of ideology protect them from the propaganda. Um, that kind of stuff was able to get into the power with Donald Trump. But he's a representation, as we were saying, of these movements, and he is just a vessel for them to basically implement all the things that the right wing project has been doing for 100 years. So it's not new. We shouldn't be surprised by it, and we shouldn't be um, agog at what they're doing. This is what the project is. And so, what that requires is for people to understand what's going on, for Democratic politicians and people who are, politicians and leaders to understand what's going on, media figures to understand what's going on, and start to build a case across a majoritarian lines that is able to oppose the type of power that they are seizing within this federal government and within state governments at this time on the Republican side. So that's what's required. It means people going to the streets. It means people voicing their opinions more. It means people showing that they are in solidarity with other people within the United States, across the globe, understanding, I care about these things. I want this to happen, and that's how we can kind of build these coalitions and grow movements, whether that's within digital spaces, whether that's outside of digital spaces. Um, that's the way it needs to be done from the grassroots. With the tools that we have at our disposal. We don't have the same type of uh, uh, unionized industrial workforces that can put their hands on the system and slow it down in the same way. What we do have are Amazon workers. We have people who use social media platforms. If everyone stopped using Twitter, if everyone stopped using Facebook, their revenues would decline. They are based on selling you advertisements. If you change your behavior en masse, the revenue streams of these large companies that are controlling everything will collapse. Everything is based on the stock market now. They just buy back their stock. If you don't provide the revenue stream through the ad buys, then those 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 are houses of cards, and the entire kind of confidence in the stock market and the way that people think about the economy will collapse, and we can build more um, um, markets and mutual aid systems, which will be the precursors of an alternative system of organizing larger scale society away from these dictatorships called corporations, which is basically just one person saying what to do, which is what they're trying to convert the government into. Is what this whole propaganda about running the government like a business means. It's a fundamentally different thing. Governments are a product of capitalism. They serve at the whims of capitalism. They serve as the guideposts by which we can run capitalism, software and hardware. That's what they serve as. You can seize government and they can provide influence in different directions so that those types of infrastructures um, diffuse and control the more authoritarian or inegalitarian motives of capitalism. You can kind of ameliorate the harms through governments, but governments, especially in the ways that um, these post-capitalist states have been set up, are in service of the liberal subject, in service of um, a vision that is running on the economic infrastructure of capitalism. So they are servants of that. You can't necessarily smash capitalism with the government, for example. You have to create an alternative system upon which you can create a governing structure which sets the rules of engagement of a new type of global system. And that's the way that happens. It's not that's a long-term project. That's the vision, I think, of a lot of young people today, because they see how badly this system is failing. And so, you know, things are going to get dismantled when they don't work anymore. And this kind of stuff, as the Democrats have shown, is not working anymore. It could work better, and we would rather build the alternative out of a safe and and just as just system as possible. We'd rather build an alternative while we are maintaining ourselves here and build the alternative here. But what's happening is basically they're just destroying the existing system, and we are forced to kind of build necessarily an alternative structure out of the ashes of that. And that's what's going to happen, because the resistance is showing itself at this moment to be incapable of resisting and taking back power of that infrastructure and being able to direct it towards more just, more democratic, freer, um, more self-determinative, more just a, a society where everyone can live freely and do what they need to do without harming any other people. And that's the vision that we want to have, where you can go anywhere you want to go, um, where you can talk to whoever you want to talk to, where you can see your neighbor in the face of every one of the billions of people on this planet, where you can make communion with every person, where we can live. Hate is a human emotion. It will happen between individuals at certain times, but where we can minimize the damaging effects of societal hate, of group hate, um, and try to work together toward you know a collective project of you know as some as some of building a paradise on Earth, and or any other spatial spatial horizon that we want to think about. We can all work together on building rockets and working on new technologies um and remunerating everyone from the efforts of our collective human labor to keep everyone safe and sound and free, um, and use all of that in order um, to advance, what humanity wants to do. People are going to have different visions of that. Politics isn't going to go away, but the means um, of negotiating those politics and those different group dynamics um, should be brought away from the necessity to kill, and to maim and to harm irreparably. We should minimize those effects as much as possible. I've often joked about subordinating. Instead of having war, we could just have sports games that where if you want decisions to be made about who the leader is, um, we can all play a sport like soccer, which anyone anywhere can play. The best team gets to choose the leader. I mean, this is a stupid idea, obviously, but that's towards something more like that, a diplomacy. Um, those are the types of structures that we need to build in, and the economic systems that support that type of diplomacy where like people are not so desperate that they feel like they need to kill in order to have their voices heard. Um, so that's the way that that we need to go. That's the way that the United States is going in the opposite direction of at this point. Um, and what we need to hope is that where the hope comes from is that we can build something from the ashes because we've done that before, and that's what history teaches us that the worst things that have ever happened um, have happened, and then people have had to build something new out of whatever remained. And that's what will happen this time. But that is not to minimize the pain and suffering and death that these types of backward lurches provoke. Um, and so we have to mourn that, we have to recognize that, and we have to take the lessons from that as we fight it in order to build something out of it. Stop it as much as possible, and then also build an alternative. That's the project. So, in the interest of stopping it, you know, we need to all kind of come together with that in any way, separate, shape, or form, joining groups, speaking out, um, exercising your freedom as an individual and as a collective. So I think that's the politics talk for today. It's about a 50 minutes. I think this is the first time I've done one of these types of kind of political speeches for a wider audience. Hope everyone enjoyed it. Or if there's something that was able to take from it. I certainly enjoy just being able to scream into the void a little bit. Everything goes around in your head all day. I encourage everyone to start their own and scream into the void as much as possible with us. And let's all stand up and try to be a voice against and a body against what's going on, and try to take back power and create a better world for everyone. So we'll leave it there, y'all. Until next time, solidarity, keep on fighting.